which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, if you would be so kind to call the roll, please.
Yes. Councilor Bouchard.
Here.
Mayor Boulay.
Here.
Councilor Champlin.
Present.
Councilor Fennessy.
Here.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Present.
Councilor Keach.
Here.
Councilor Kennison.
Here.
Councilor Kretovic.
Here.
Councilor Mattson.
Here.
Councilor Nyan.
Present.
Councilor Pierce.
Here.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
She will be about 10 minutes late.
Councilor Todd.
Here.
And Councilor Werner.
Here.
Great. Wonderful to see everyone. Tonight, as you all know, we are going to have our hearing on the budget as proposed by the manager that has been presented to us about a month ago. And then following the public hearing, we'll have a discussion, and if there's a desire, we'll actually move forward and vote on a budget tonight with any changes that could or might be proposed. So with that, the clerk does remind me, we do have some minutes to adopt, which I failed to do last time. So we do have the minutes of June 3rd, 2021 before us. This is of the Finance Committee. Does anybody, we've all have
Move
those?
approval?
Motion made and seconded to approve those minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, ready for the vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the minutes are adopted for June 3rd. Thank you, Madam Clerk. To get to the public hearings, to make it easier for those who wish to testify, would anybody be opposed to having the clerk read all the items for public hearings? And that way, whoever wishes to testify could testify in any of the items that they wish to. Is that acceptable? Great.
Sounds good.
Madam Clerk, deep breath. I got water right here for you. And
Thank you. So the first item is a resolution fixing and determining the amount of money to be appropriated by the City of Concord for fiscal year 2022 for the general fund, special revenue funds, enterprise funds, debt service funds, and de minimis accounts. Second item is a resolution for the annual capital closeout and repurposing of capital project funds. Next is a resolution authorizing and appropriating funds for fiscal year 2022 for capital projects and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes for various capital projects. Then there's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I, General Code, Chapter 1, Government Organization, Article 1-5, Fees, Fines, and Penalties, water rates for the water rate structure. There's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I, General Code, Chapter 1, Government Organization, Article 1-5, Fees, Fines, and Penalties, water rates for water, wastewater rate increase. And then there's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I, General Code, Chapter 9, Water, Article 9-1, Waterworks. And last is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I, General Code, Chapter 9, Water, Article 9-3, Sewer Rentals.
thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Before we open a public hearing, Mr. Manager, do you want to say any last final words, or?
No, I just remind the council you do have public testimony in item number 5D, which you all have distributed, and it's all available to you. I just wanted to make sure, in case some people can't attend, at least they've got their information out.
Great, thank you. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come and share their thoughts this evening? Lots of people who like.
It's really difficult to hear what's being said. There's like a feedback.
Gotcha. All right. So this happened last time, and they promised. They said it would be fixed. What do you think? How about now? Can you hear it now?
A little better.
Is it like an echo, or is it you just?
Both. It was both, but now you're loud and it's echoing. But now it's much better.
So if we simply project, will that help a lot?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. So. Not to be redundant, we'll just do it real quick. So I promise I won't make the city clerk read all those again, but we've read all the record, all the hearings into the record. So anyone wishing to testify, now's the time to do it. And you can testify on any of the items, whether it be the operating budget, capital budget, enterprise funds, etc. Who would like to come share their thoughts? Anyone? Mr. Swiker. It's nice to see you.
Where am I supposed to be?
It's probably best right there.
Okay, thank you.
It's great to see you. Welcome.
Well, I would like to commend the City Council for finally returning to in-person meetings. Wonderful. And I will try and talk on only 5 things tonight. The first one will be very quick. I was distressed to see that the community center talked about being open throughout the pandemic. Well, it may have been true for the employees, but most of the actual events were held only remotely, so it wasn't really open. You couldn't even go in to use the restrooms if you happened to be in the park. So I think, you know, that's an issue, and the related issue is that you could not use the wireless internet effectively outside it. So any events that were being held, you know, via Zoom or whatever, you couldn't go over there and use the internet. And I'll extend that to the library, which once again had a lot of time that the library was closed, or right now they're still on very reduced activities. And you can get a little bit of internet outside to check your email, but I try to do online courses, and basically the streaming outside is not reliable. And I've complained numerous times, and apparently CIT said, well, it's not expected to be outside a stone building or whatever it is. And this week I was over in a small town in Vermont, and they had a big sign in front of the library. We guarantee that you can access the internet within 300 feet of this building. And when I was doing a car repair, the shop advertised they had free wireless internet, so I brought my computer while I waited, and I tried to log on. It turned out that they may have had wireless internet. What I got is the car dealer next door for free wireless internet. So it is possible to give out free wireless internet at an extended range, and I think if the city is going to do everything remotely, they need to provide the free wireless internet at a number of places around the city so people can actually access what's going on. So that's the first thing I would have to say about the library. The second thing is, as you know, ordinarily during the year, the library loans out laptop computers, but during the pandemic, they refused to loan out laptop computers. You couldn't either get one for an extended period to sit outside and use the wireless internet, or even to sit outside for an hour while the library was open and use it. And if school districts are able to loan out computers to kids, I don't see why library patrons shouldn't be allowed to borrow laptops as they're provided. The magazines in the library have not been available for a year because they don't want a bunch of people touching them. And my response to that is, well, if you have a monthly magazine, you let somebody use it, you put it in quarantine like the books for 3 days, and you can still have 10 people use that same magazine within a month, but they wouldn't provide the magazines either. They took a bunch of atlases, road atlases, that used to be available and vanished because supposedly they were out of date. Well, they may have been out of date, but they didn't get new ones. So would you rather have a 5-year-old road atlas or not at all? Not that many roads have changed in 5 years. The hours of the library are greatly reduced. They haven't been open on Sundays for a year. And I think, once again, if we're trying to be multicultural, there's people who are in the city who are Jewish and not being open but a couple of evenings a week and not on and only on Saturdays and not Sundays is discriminatory. I think we should go to the winter hours for the summer in the library to make up for the time that it hasn't been open all year. And if the library doesn't have any librarians who are Jewish or Muslim or agnostic and don't want to have a different day off than Sunday, then maybe we should wonder why we aren't being more diverse in our staff. And once again, talking about the library, I hate to harp on it, but that's a place I spend a lot of time. If the city green committee, whatever they call themselves, was ever to go over there, every night at closing time, the librarians go and open the shades on the big windows to let out all the heat or cool whatever's in there. But apparently because the police want to be able to look in, well, I would say you could save a lot of energy and be more green if you bought motion detectors or cameras so they could close the shades and use less energy. So, okay, enough for the library. Now my favorite topic, which I didn't say anything about last year, so I'm back, and that's the leaf pickup. They've now changed things so it's slightly better. Now, 2 of the 3 things, they alternate between which end they start at, so that instead of always being either the first, so your leaves aren't down yet, or the last, so they never get around to you. Now, if you're at one end, you get to alternate between being first and last, and the people in the middle are still in the middle. And they have this map where you're supposed to figure out what's coming next. Well, I live in Ward 4, and a lot of people think of Ward 4 as the north end, but up until 2 years ago, it was always the east side crew that came and did my street. One day, in fact, they started on Shaker Road in the morning and jumped over and did my street in the afternoon, and I'm supposed to guess that's the next street for them. So I think that now it's the south side crew that does my street. So, once again, I'm supposed to figure this out. And on the map last year, they came to win the block, and then it was like 2 weeks before they got there because they went some other direction. So I'm going to propose a system that somebody, based on how long it takes to pick up leaves in the past, breaks the whole city into like a 3-day segment of leaf pickup. And for each crew, they list in order which of those segments they're going to do in order. And so by following which segment they're in, you have an idea of how many segments you are away from being done. And this not only will help you figure things out, but think of this. We don't have to have everybody either the front, the middle, or the end. We can rotate, one area every year so that everybody gets a chance to be first, last, and in the middle by using these segments. And I would say if General Services can't figure out how to do this, my suggestion is we make the public information person in General Services part-time and hire a consultant to figure it out, because it shouldn't be that expensive. It shouldn't be that hard. Okay, so we're moving right along. Well, we're kind of in that area, the water and sewer bills. And once again, no one I have talked to thinks this is at all reasonable. The city has some idea if they want to keep the revenues constant. So instead of charging you for the water they use, you charge you for the water you don't use. Small users pay like 2/3 for the privilege of being hooked up to the water. And then they pay a little bit for how much water they actually use. And if we're in a drought, why are we discouraging people from saving water by making it so cheap? Everyone I've talked to says, sure, if you want to equalize the bills every year, you can base it on past usage or whatever to even it out, but it's silly to make everyone essentially pay the same regardless of how much water they use. And I don't know, with the city solicitors here, I don't know whether in the city council you're allowed to talk about critical race theory, but this is exactly the sort of thing, the least privileged people are being charged essentially the same as the most privileged people who use a lot of water by making the water rate primarily a fixed rate instead of a variable rate. So we need to go back to charging only for the water you use. And if you want to do it by valuation, you could include that in the tax billing instead of as part of the water bill. And then it would be tax deductible as well. But charging by your meter size, when essentially you have no choice of what your meter size is just outrageous. Okay, last item. I think that the city development process is highly off track. They've slipped through 2 projects that I don't think would have occurred if they'd had regular public hearings in person on them. And supposedly there was 15 people interested in the employment security building. And I don't know how many of them were worse, but it seems like nearly everyone in the city would have picked some different one than that one. But the city residents did not get a chance to. Ordinarily, if you take bids, you open all the bids and you get to see the losing ones as well as the winning ones. But we haven't been told what other people might have bid on this, because that's all confidential real estate transactions. And the same thing with the Concord grocery store. The Monitor published an article that was full of errors about the project, and they wouldn't issue a correction until after the vote was taken. I think the vote might have been quite different if they'd had a correct article about it. And what I see is that, city staff are making $1 million decisions with no public input. And then they come to the city council, instead of this being the developer's plan, this is my plan. And they give the city council a hard sell for my plan, instead of letting the developer make the proposal to the city council and the city staff giving a balanced viewpoint of this particular proposal, and letting opponents of this proposal, other developers, come in and say, I can do better. So I'd like to suggest that in the future, that the developers are required to present their TIF districts and whatnot, rather than city staff. I think that, like the Board of Adjustment, you should swear in anyone that testifies on these. So if people make statements that are found to be fraudulent, they can be prosecuted for it. And in conjunction with this, I think the city should eliminate the position of Director of Redevelopment, Downtown, and Special Projects, because they won't be presenting these anymore. They can become a consultant and let the developers hire them to present this. Because, you know, we need to have more input by the people of the city instead of the city staff making all the multi-million-dollar decisions and then just being ordered to vote it in or else. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's no questions.
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Swiggers, great to see you again. Good evening and welcome.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. I'm Jessica Martin. I'm the Executive Director of In-Town Concord, and this is Julie Bushaw. She is our president. We wanted to first start by thanking the City Council and council members for their ongoing support of In-Town Concord and the downtown businesses. Small businesses have faced some challenges over the year, and through the business grants that you have provided and the expanded outdoor seating for restaurants, the city has been really forward-thinking throughout the pandemic. We're grateful for your partnership and collaboration as we enter into a new year full of events. As most of you know, In-Town Concord is responsible for planning market days, Halloween Howl, Upstairs Downtown, Midnight Merriment, Winterfest, and a few other smaller events throughout the year. We also provide downtown businesses marketing, manage a facade grant program, and advocate for several issues that impact the vitality of downtown. We operate on a lean staff of 2 full-time employees, and we rely on the partnerships of our supporters, volunteers, downtown businesses, sponsors, vendors, and the cities. In reviewing the city's budget for the fiscal year 2021-2022, we recognize that there was a $10,000 decrease to the grant amount that has been historically awarded to In-Town Concord. This year, the budget is showing a $20,000 grant rather than a $30,000 grant, with a note that says, a budgetary reduction in funding to $20,000 is recommended for 2022, the same as the final City Council allocation for 2021. At the April City Council meeting via Zoom, we discussed the decrease to $20,000 for fiscal year 2020-21 due to the police detail not being needed in the 2020 year for market days. In-Town provided the council with a detailed summary from 2020 to 2021 of the events that we were able to host, and continued our mission by supporting downtown businesses through our facade grant program, education, and advocacy. Because of the size of our organization, this grant decrease would amount to a 5% cut to our budget. With that said, we thought it was important to bring a couple points to your attention prior to the budget moving forward. First, as an unintended consequences of the expanded outdoor dining, In-Town Concord has less vendor spaces available to sell for market days. This impacts us in 2 ways, because we lose some of the restaurants that have historically bought booths, as well as some of the real estate available to place other vendors. This change is great for restaurants and one that In-Town absolutely supports, but it has presented some budgeting challenges for us. Another item for consideration is that in 2022, market days will be returning to June. The only reason that we did move it was because of COVID. It's happening in August this year so that people could be vaccinated and feel safer attending such a large event. This means that we are planning 2 market days during the fiscal year and paying all the fees to the police and city twice. In closing, I want to remind the council that In-Town Concord plans events that attract thousands of people to downtown Concord annually. The revenue generated by these events and enjoyed by the downtown merchants is critical, especially during this pandemic recovery period. If the council is truly prioritizing economic development and recreational opportunities during this time, we ask that you reconsider the decrease to our grant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Councilman Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you tell me how many vendors you won't be able to place on Main Street due to the outdoor dining?
We're still figuring that out because there is a process for where we have to go and measure each spot and figure out how many vendors. Historically, we've done 180 vendors. So if you look at all of the outdoor dining space, we've got Barley House, who usually buys a expanded booth. So not only do we lose the income from their booth, but then we lose the extra spots that they're taking. So if you just walk downtown, you can kind of eyeball it and see, okay, that's 3 booths. But we haven't done that exactly yet. But we do know that there are vendors just that we're not going to get because of it, like Barley House, for example.
So you don't know, it could be
Our
5
estimate,
or 20.
our estimate is between 5,000 and 6,000. That's our estimate right now.
Would you agree also that restaurants like the Barley House have also been hard hit with COVID?
Absolutely,
and
absolutely, yes.
Probably without that space, might not be able to purchase that space for in-town Concord for market days?
Absolutely.
Possible?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else? So I spend a little bit of time on Main Street and get the opportunity to chat with many of our great businesses downtown. Have you, as a board, and I know that you're still probably in your first year, I guess, have you ever had any discussions about changing up some of the events that you hold? Many of them have been held for a long time, and as the merchants know, and they speak to you very well, there are some that are designed to put people in shops to purchase. There are others which really drive traffic to just bring people downtown.
Right.
Right, so Halloween Howl is about bringing people downtown and enjoying the community. I get that. Midnight Merriment, we're driving people into stores and such. Market Days is a bit of a mix because some merchants pack up and go away during that period of time because
Right.
it does nothing for their businesses. Others go out to the street and welcome the opportunity to sell their goods. But how often do you look to refresh maybe and think about some different or shake up what you do? Because, for instance, I was having a conversation recently with one merchant. They said, we've really struggled over the past year to bring people in, and they're trying to be creative about how they get foot traffic into their stores as well. And they said, Saturdays we have the farmers market. It's obviously very, very busy on Saturdays. And they talked about, is there an opportunity to hold something, particularly in the summer months, where you see the ability for people to be outside, to do things more often, maybe, a couple times a month, or even throughout the year to hold maybe smaller events,
Right.
but much more targeted.
Right.
Have you ever considered that?
Yeah, I can tell you, so I started in December, and I've been doing a lot of visiting of our supporters in the downtown businesses, and I've also received the same feedback that they're looking for maybe more frequent events that, bring people downtown, but not maybe the level or the size of what we've historically done. So we are looking to freshen them up or even tag on to some of our existing events, maybe hitting a segment of the population that we're not currently hitting. For instance, Halloween, oh my God. You know what I'm trying to say. That's designed for kids, right? But we have, a big segment of the population that doesn't have kids. They're young professionals. They want to go out. They want to do an event. We've already got the street closed. We extended a little longer. We do something geared to that demographic too. So that's definitely on my list of things to do, a priority for me and our board as well.
There's also businesses that we don't normally interact with. So a lot of our interactions are your businesses, your restaurants, but then you have your hair salons. There's all kinds of other businesses and other opportunities. And so that actually we're going to tap to them versus us trying to create what we can do and how we can utilize them. So we're going to now go to them and say, all right, how can we support our hair salons? What can we do? How can we partner with you? We don't have to create the idea. They can help partner with us and come up with something. So we've been recently talking about how can we expand our reach and work with the people down there that are impacted.
I was going to be flip and say something. Between wealth management and salons, you got half of Main Street. So.
You're not kidding.
Sorry. There's a lot of great salons, a lot of great
There-
wealth management.
There's a lot. I honestly didn't realize it, but I took your development list of all of them, and I did an inventory myself, and there's a lot. Take my word for it.
Okay. Anyone else? I really appreciate you coming out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Good evening and welcome.
Hello,
Hello.
I'm Celia Chase, and I'm very pleased to be speaking to you today on behalf of the Friends Emergency Housing Shelter. And I'm going to flip back and forth between glasses and no glasses, depending on how far away the piece of paper is. I am a Concord resident. I've been a Concord resident for over 25 years. I'm in Ward 5, and I'm also very pleased to be a Friends board member. I've been on the board for over 4 years, and I'm here supporting the emergency shelter on Thompson Street, which has been in operation since 2006. And the City of Concord has been supporting the shelter, funding it about a level of $57,000. And in this past year, we served over 80 individuals. About 23 of those were Concord residents. In the fiscal year 22 budget, there's a proposed cut of $20,000, and I'm here to talk to you about reconsidering that budget cut. This program, this shelter, is unique, one of a kind, in that it not only serves individuals, it's really a program serving families and children, and those needs are unique in that we have to consider child care services, coordinating with the school districts, and other special needs that are unique to families and children rather than just individuals. In 2019, the Friends Emergency Housing Shelter Program had a massive budget cut at the state level of $120,000. This left us with a deficit of $30,000, which as a board member we considered that we wanted to absorb this deficit because of the importance of the services that we provided to family and children. We've looked at ways of becoming more efficient and how we could reduce costs. And as part of this, we have reduced a full-time staff member, coordinator. We've had other staff reductions, any overlapping staffing members we've had to cut. And one of the most painful recent reductions was our overnight staffing, which has been very difficult to absorb, to have no overnight staffing services. This program, however, still runs at a loss, and it's really critical that we have the support in the City of Concord, and these $20,000 is a significant part of that. So I ask that you reconsider this budget cut, and I appreciate you listening to what I had to say today. I also have Nancy Paul, who is the Executive Director of Friends, here today as well.
Thank you very much. I will keep this relatively brief. I just want to emphasize that the most vulnerable people in our city are the ones who end up at our shelter. And we know that we are expecting more need for our services as we face the end of eviction moratoriums that have kept some otherwise shelter clients from coming to us. We are facing what we expect to be far greater need. We are already seeing more difficulties with kids who did not flourish during remote school, needing more support and services from our staff, staying connected with the school. A lot of parents who perhaps weren't stably housed during the pandemic, we were one of the reasons why they would reconnect after they came into our shelter. So our services are much more than a roof over someone's head, and it's not possible for us to continue to provide those services as an organizational level if we are cut further. We are doing our very best to meet our commitment to the citizens of Concord by continuing to operate the shelter responsibly. But we cannot change what the electricity costs are, what it costs to keep the lights on, and we can't operate the shelter wholly unstaffed. We have done our part to cut as far as we can cut. Our budget, right now, this represents a 7% cut in our total budget, which is already a deficit budget. So I think it's important to note that we started our shelter services because the City of Concord asked us to in 1980. That's how we got into the shelter business. We responded to the city's call when the city needed someone to operate the cold weather shelter. And we responded to the city and its citizens when our funding was cut. I'm proud of the work that we've done to reduce that deficit to the smallest amount possible, but I am saying to you, please, please, we have been there for the city. We would really appreciate it if the city would reconsider this and restore the $20,000 so that we can continue to be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a couple questions, if you don't mind. Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Thank you. Can you explain what the impact has been cutting the overnight services coordinator?
So we installed some cameras to ensure that we had some ability to monitor the site remotely. On one occasion, we had a family with a young person who was in a mental health crisis, and we did not know that the police had been called because it was taking place in an area that was outside the scope of the cameras. Ideally, our staff often can ensure that those situations do not escalate. Without having someone there overnight, it simply wasn't possible to de-escalate that. The family remained in a pretty heightened state of crisis for quite a while. We've had other situations where someone unauthorized entered the shelter through a window on the side of the building. And if we had had staff there, there would have been a bit of a commotion outside the window to hear or to observe on the cameras in real time and be able to identify that something needed to be done. So it's painful, but it's also more important to us to shelter families the best that we can, and we work to mitigate any circumstances that occur until we're able to restore full funding to the program.
Thank you.
Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I hope you can hear me okay. I feel like I'm in Fenway Park. I'm waiting for the organ to start. But thank you for being here tonight, first of all. Just a couple of quick questions. I understand that Family Promise can house one or two families, and those families rotate among member churches every week, so they're moving from one place to the other. And I believe that, if I'm correct, that the Friends program can house 8 families in your shelter?
Yes.
How many other family shelters are there in Concord?
The City of Concord does not have any other shelter services for families.
All right. Are there other family shelter services other than a Family Promise type of situation anywhere else in the greater Concord area or in Merrimack County?
We are the only one in Merrimack County that is a physical shelter that's open all the time. Yeah.
And follow up, Your Honor? Thank you. Please. And do you receive funding from the county or from any of the other municipalities in the county whose former residents you serve when they become unhoused?
We do not receive any funding from Merrimack County. Typically, what has happened when we've talked to other towns is they've indicated that their human services funding is used for their residents. Concord residents, because of the state's Continuum of Care program, Concord residents, if they need shelter on a particular day and we don't have an opening, they might end up in Manchester. So the state system that admits people into shelter prioritize getting them into shelter rather than getting them into shelter locally. So we can prioritize 2 families of equivalent service level that call us on the same day, but we have to prioritize totally unsheltered families over families that might be doubling up with a friend in a situation that's less than ideal. I don't know if that was clear enough.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. So beyond the city and the state, what are your other methods of funding?
We receive funding from corporate sponsorships. We receive funding from individuals. We receive an enormous amount of funding from foundations. We do, when we have a program service fee that we can bill cities and towns for, if the residents are unable to pay it, it's $10 a night for participation in our program. Frankly, the much more frequent scenario is that the residents will actually do community service within the building, during the COVID time period, we have not had the ability to administer that community service piece of it in the same way. So we do bill cities and towns when they are towns that pay, but frankly, there are very few of them.
Thank you.
Council Cassidy?
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you have some sense of the number of families out there that need services that are unable to get them because you're at capacity?
I think the only number that we have to gauge it on is turnaways, which is the number of families that call that we have to turn away. The slightly confusing piece of that conversation is going to be that we are a family-only shelter. So if you do not have a minor child in your custody 50% or more of the time, you're not eligible for shelter with us. We have had periods of time over the last year when we have not been full. We did decompress so that 4 families are within our shelter, and we have capacity for 4 families at local hotels. So we keep the shelter full as often as possible, and if there are openings, it's at the hotel, which is through COVID-specific funding. So the support for the hotel does not come out of our operating budget that we were talking about before. So turnaways, our usual capacity in an average year, which we certainly hope this year will be, would be about 1,200 calls for service. So an average of 3 or 4 a day, and often it will be 1 or 2 a day during certain periods, and then it could be 6 or 7 phone calls on a busier day.
Am I correct in understanding, excuse me, that those families that get turned away and may be housed in a hotel are funded by the city? It's our responsibility.
The city
to
funds
pay for
different families than we do. We have our own pool of Emergency Solutions Grant COVID funding, and we also just received Community Development Block Grant COVID funding to support shelter decompression. So it's a very different pool of money specific to COVID. We have our own funding. In the last year, we have averaged between $7,000 and $12,000 a month in hotel bills through that pool of funding, which does not come out of our operating fund and is not paid through the City of Concord's Human Services general operations.
Thank you. Thank you for the good work that you do.
Thank you.
Council Credit.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you so much for coming this evening. I'm hoping that I don't know, it's all kind of confusing when you talk about the funding sources and everything.
Yep.
I want to go back to the conversation about the other communities in Merrimack County or the surrounding areas. And I don't want to pick on Loudoun. Loudoun's a great town. I'm just going to use it as an example.
Yep.
If I live in Loudoun and I find myself and my family homeless and I come to Concord, I'm now a Concord resident? Is that what that means?
No, that is not what that means. It's a great question. It's not what that means. You would still be considered a Loudoun resident if that was your last address.
Okay.
And we can talk to towns, but as I said, many of them simply refuse to pay.
So in follow-up to that one, not to pick on our friends from Bow, but Bow, and I could be 100% wrong. When I checked at the end of March, early April, they have a budget of about $3,000 that they contribute to help those in need in their community. And during a pandemic, about the first week in April, they had spent 0 of the $3,000. Do you ever follow up and go, hey, you haven't spent anything?
We don't do that with all the cities and towns in Merrimack now.
But it seems logical that when we're talking about a funding gap in a year, when it's a difficult year to continue to provide services, to deal with $1 million that is being passed down from the state for the retirement fund, to help everybody.
Sure.
But we don't reach out to the other towns that actually use the services of your organization, correct?
It's not that we don't do outreach, but we don't necessarily have the bandwidth and the staffing to monitor each town's budget individually and what they've expended and what they haven't. And I'm going to be really frank with you. Some of them are not great about the public notices of information. The data on their websites in some cities and towns is pretty far out of date. We do our best to follow, but no, we certainly are not in a position to have staff to monitor each town's human services budget usage at the end of the year and then to request it. And I also have to be really frank. I don't know that we've had a lot of sending families from Bow. I think the reason they haven't used that fund is in part because they haven't necessarily
I'm
been
not
sending
picking on
families
Bow.
to us.
It was just one
Yeah.
that I actually
Yep.
look at as
Yep.
well as the other towns. And it's the one I remembered, the $3,000 budget.
Yep.
And
Yep.
again, kind neighbors from Bow, not picking on you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anyone else? Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Thank you. Could you explain how you work with our Human Services Department in the city of Concord?
I can try, but I will also say Karen. You should certainly speak with Karen as well. I am the executive director. I am not the shelter director. We have multiple programs, and this is one of the programs that we operate. When the Concord staff call us and tell us that they have someone who needs shelter, we evaluate whether or not we have space and whether or not, what we usually do is tell them to call the shelter. And the families will call us, we evaluate whether or not they fit the state's criteria for us to accept them for shelter and whether or not we have space. There are a small number of people, for example, right now, who might be eligible for hotel space, but they have violated the hotel's rules and agreements. And so if we do not have space at 30 Thompson Street, one of those 4 spaces I spoke about, we can't put them at a hotel because the hotel won't take them. They're on the blacklist for that hotel. But if the hotel will take them, we are glad to take them in at that point. Typically what happens is that they will call us directly the day that they are unsheltered, and if we do not have space, we will tell them to call back again every day to check to see if we have space, because it's a very dynamic situation. Where they have crossover between different streams of services related to human services in the city of Concord, we certainly also reach out to the city to ask them questions about whether or not we can identify other service providers or what other pools of funding are available. So if somebody calls us and they tell us that they are behind on their rent, they're not eligible for shelter at our shelter because they are unsheltered. If they are a resident of the city of Concord, we will suggest to them that they should call the city of Concord to discuss it with them because there are human services resources available. So it ends up, in some cases, we refer callers who don't know about the city services to the city services, and in some cases, the city refers families to us for shelter. If we do not have space, the city often ends up paying for a hotel room, and if they are in a hotel room for a period of time and space opens up and they call us that day, we take them out of the city-paid hotel room into our shelter.
Thank you.
Is that enough in a nutshell, Karen?
Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Based on the testimony that I've heard tonight, it sounds like the city of Concord is the only community in Merrimack County that's contributing substantially on a regular basis.
Correct.
And based on some of the numbers you provided previously, there's only 23 of the 87 families that you served last year would have been Concord residents. So my question is, it sounds like on a daily basis, you have a choice to make between multiple families that may be eligible to come into the shelter provided their space. Does the city get any priority for its residents as a result of the contribution that it's making to your budget?
So we are only allowed to prioritize them in like circumstances because of the state's requirements for coordinated care. So the state says if someone is unsheltered and someone is sheltered, we must prioritize the unsheltered person regardless of where they're coming from. If there are 2 people at the same level, we can do and will continue to prioritize the individuals from Concord.
follow-up. Let's say on a weekly basis, how often are you in a situation where, in choosing between families of the same eligibility, that priority goes to Concord residents versus residents of a different town in Merrimack County?
There are multiple occasions every year where we prioritize Concord residents. There are very few occasions when we are prioritizing individuals who have similar circumstances. Everyone who calls us is in different circumstances. If someone's in a car, it's a very clear-cut case that they need somewhere to be tonight. People who are in an unheated RV and have been living there for months in November, that's a very clear-cut case that if they finally get to call us, we take them in. So the number of times when we actually are prioritizing like individuals is rare.
Anyone else? I do have a couple questions, but I want to make a statement first. I'm literally sick to my stomach having this conversation. We were talking about $20,000 in a $100 million budget, and we're talking about people and families who need shelter. This is crazy, this conversation. But I'll also share with you this. We are responsible to all the members of this community, and they expect us to get the biggest bang out of every dollar that we spend, whether it be at the fire department or, you could argue easily that we need a new ambulance. You could argue that we need potentially more officers on the street. You could argue that our planning staff is overworked and overwhelmed by projects that are coming forth. You could argue that our assessor's office, our clerk's office, trying to run elections. Each one of these departments have their challenges. And we are not an entitlement community. And it is a big deal that we are not an entitlement community. We are not 50,000 in population, and we are not Portsmouth or Rochester or Dover. So the dollars that we spend on social services come from Concord taxpayers. So thank you. You contribute to this as well. Having said that, please help me understand what happened to the $120,000 from the state? Because just recently on the council agenda, the executive council agenda, I noticed that they did fund many, many organizations across the state. In fact, they funded several organizations right here in the city of Concord. I noticed that yours was there and then was not. What happened to the 120?
So we actually received continued funding from the state of New Hampshire, but the amount dropped by about $120,000 a year, a little over 2 years ago. The state decided that they were going to take a different approach to evaluating funding. In our shelter, we have 28 beds and space for a little more if you have an infant, for example, in a bassinet. If we take in a mother and child, an infant, into our shelter in a room that can sleep 5, we have 2 bed nights. So the number of bed nights, persons using a bed per night in a family shelter is solely determined by the composition of the families in need at any given time. And we always have empty beds. When they moved to prioritizing bed nights, we don't look good by that metric. So all of our rooms might be full in a given year, and the reality of it is that our bed nights might be lower than the year before when we were not full because of the composition of the families that we serve. So when the state started to apply that metric, they cut it. And I think another general statement would be that there was an increasing focus on long-term homeless individuals, which is not the same as a family in crisis. If you are prioritizing veterans, long-term homeless individuals, and in some cases there's been an increasing focus on youth homelessness, none of those are priority areas that touch us. Because an 18-year-old who comes out of foster care, there's an increasing amount of funding available for that. It is a real, genuine problem that we need to figure out how to solve, but what we are focused on are families with children. And so, as those funding priorities changed, they changed the way that they assigned it, and their decisions, from what we understand, was largely based on bed nights, which is not a metric that we punch above our weight on, I guess. We had lengthy discussions about it. They also moved to a per service fee, so they started to have us invoice per bed night. After about a year of that, they changed to a flat funding structure, which frankly, for our organization is better to have a more predictable funding stream. And we got as creative as we could in finding new funding sources, but that's a big hit. You know, it was about 25% of our budget at that point in time. So,
So who do you work with at the state?
the Bureau of Housing Supports.
Okay. When you said the county doesn't give you any dollars, were you talking about for just for this program?
That's correct. Yep,
Because the county does support it in other.
that's
ways.
correct.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
So, question. You said every once in a while you have empty beds.
I'm sorry?
You said every once in a while you have empty
Yep.
beds. Instead of this waiting for someone to reach out to you, would you consider reaching out to the city and saying, by the way, we have some available beds. Do you have anybody? Have you ever done that? Or would you consider doing that?
We do that on occasion, but I would not say that we do it frequently. No. Yes, so we would not only consider it, we've done it.
Okay. Would you consider doing it some more?
Gladly, absolutely, yep.
And I had one other that escaped me. Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
If the city would like us to improve our services, we are anxious to improve our services, and we will continue to do that.
I do have one more. So have you considered asking the county for money towards shelter?
Candidly, we can ask the county for money towards shelter. Most recently, I know that the Concord Coalition to End Homelessness started to get a small amount of funding from the county. Didn't seem like the right time to add more things to the county's human services budget because the cold weather shelter was starting up at that point in time. So certainly we can.
But wouldn't you consider the issue of homelessness not an issue unique to Concord? Isn't it really a statewide program? Isn't it a statewide issue? I mean, Manchester feels it, Nashua feels it, particularly leaning on cities, right? Because that's where the city services are.
I think we seek funding from absolutely anyone we think we have a shot at, frankly. So
would you consider going to the county? I mean, one of the reasons why the coalition, I think, was successful is because we said, hey, this is a good idea, you should do it, and we have a great county commissioner who listened to us and, you know, she advocated for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yep. Yeah.
So, I mean, would you consider, so for instance, you know, when we talk about our dollars, now they have to fit within a bucket, and I understand that, but we got, and again, go back to we're not an entitlement community, we're gonna get $2 million for over the 2 years, okay? The county got $29 million, right? Now, they have the same buckets we do, but if you look at their agenda for tomorrow night at their meeting, I've asked them to consider putting an agenda on their item, which they've agreed to do, that they're gonna talk about awards to social services, folks like yourself. But as it was reminding me, they can't help you unless you ask.
So I think it's important to also note that.
I'm trying to pave a map for you.
Yeah, well. I'm proud of the fact that we've made up a difference of $90,000 in the last 2 years in that budget deficit. I want to be really clear. We didn't go 120K down. We cut services, we brought in more money.
I'm not being critical.
Yeah,
I'm saying to you, would you be willing to go ask?
Yes, I would be willing to go ask, but the timing of that funding, I believe the county application goes in September, if I'm not mistaken.
They do have a different fiscal year, yes.
And so if we get a cut in June, and in September we put in an application, you know, if the city would like to work with us on giving us some time to find a way to absorb the existing cuts and new cuts and find new funding, that would be great.
I appreciate your comment. I think you're reading way too much into it for my question. Just on the surface, all I'm looking for you to answer is, would you consider going to the county to seek additional dollars regarding this particular program?
I thought I said yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, then you went into the timing didn't work for you and otherwise.
Okay.
Just looking for a yes. That's all I was looking for. Would you believe tomorrow night, you probably should pay attention to their agenda where they're going to talk about our dollars.
Yep.
Great. That's wonderful. Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Are there things the city can do to help you and help the other social service agencies be able to address the homelessness issue, especially as you mentioned, the coming eviction crisis?
I think the opportunity for people to think of homelessness as something that happens to families, something that happens to children, infants, toddlers. There are some in the city who might be very surprised to learn the role that places like Merrimack Valley Daycare and others play in ensuring that kids who are experiencing homelessness get vital services that they need. And I think you guys have heard to death that we need affordable housing. You know, the difficulty in getting families out of the shelter into market rate apartments is certainly becoming more pronounced and not less. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, both of you. I appreciate you
you.
standing up there for a long time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who else would like to come share their thoughts? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Boulay and councilors. My name is Mary Shue. I am a resident of Concord. I live on Church Street, around the corner from Byron, and I serve on the board of directors for the Friends of White Park, which is a nonprofit organization. We're all volunteers, and our mission is to support White Park to be a destination for all of New Hampshire and visitors. So our primary activity is the redesign of the Monkey Around Playground. You've probably heard from us before. We've been working with city officials since December of 17 to develop a plan to redesign, revitalize, rebuild the Monkey Around Playground based on the strategy that was intended 27 years ago. 27 years ago, that playground was built. It was built through community volunteers and community volunteers who assisted in planning the playground and building the playground. The playground was intended to last for 20 years. And we have been working tirelessly to maintain the playground, make sure it continues to be safe, and occasionally removing features from the playground because they're no longer safe and they're not in a position to repair. So for the past 3 years, as a group, we have been working with the city to enlist proposals from playground builders for a redesign and a rebuild of the playground, and to engage the community in helping us figure out what is a destination playground for Concord, New Hampshire. What will this playground look like? How will we make sure that that playground is accessible to each and every member of our community? You're welcome. This was supposed to be a PowerPoint. It's not, so we made copies of it because we think it looks pretty lovely. And we're really just here to give you an update. So we are at a point now in our planning where we're ready to embark on a major fundraising campaign for the new, revised, reinvigorated, reimagined Monkey Around Playground. And we've just launched our website, which is friendsofwhitepark.org, and the playground plans are on the website, and the community contributions are on the website. All the information you have in front of you is there, and we have a portal for donations as well as for people to sign up and join us. Now, we also do other things as the Friends of White Park. We're not all about the playground, but that is our priority. We also support and provide direction to the Winter Carnival and also the spring playground, or the spring White Park cleanup. Trying to think if there's more information that I haven't said out loud. We are about a year behind schedule because of the pandemic. And we are looking for more people to get involved with our effort through volunteering, obviously contributing, serving on our board. We're looking to expand our board. And we're here to provide you with an update and answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate this, and I appreciate the handout. Anybody have any questions? Okay. I'd be glad to talk to you offline about fundraising if you want.
Great, thank you so much. Oh, I'm sorry, I was really encouraged to bring these. So part of our soliciting community feedback is we spent time in a couple of elementary schools to get the students' vision for what should this playground look like. So if anyone doubts that we actually did that, we have like hundreds of drawings and ideas, we've, as a committee, have been more frugal than you could probably imagine. One of the most popular ideas was a zip line into the swimming pool that starts from the woods. So while that idea was solicited by a well-organized group of children, it doesn't end up in the final design. So if anyone, we have the children's...
I think the city has enough insurance to see Council Champlin do that.
City solicitor seems nervous.
Yeah, they also we're really hoping for a petting zoo. So a lot of the children's drawings are on the website, and we're trying to figure out ways to get them out there. And also the design of the playground was announced at the last Winter Carnival and in our new skate house, and I think it's still in the skate house, or if it's not, it's going to be soon. So thank you so much for your time.
Question, Your Honor?
Sure, Council Champlin.
Is there something special and unique about this playground?
Is there something special and unique? I think the fact that it was designed by our Concord community makes it special, makes it unique. And I think the fact that the design itself allows for each and every single member of our community to be able to enjoy it. Right now, that's far from the case. Wood chips aren't conducive to people with any type of challenge in getting around, whether it's using a walker, pushing a stroller, using a wheelchair. So our current playground actually, it prevents many of our members of our community from being able to enjoy it. But this new redesign, everyone can play.
So this is going to be an accessible playground?
Completely accessible, universally designed, based on national standards. I mean, right now, the Monkey Around Playground is actually, it barely meets ADA accessibility standards, and we don't want to just barely meet something that doesn't allow everyone to enjoy it. So the company that we have been working with after the RFQ process is Leather's Playground Company, and they are the original Monkey Around Playground designers and helped us with the community build, and also maintained. Once you look closely at the design, you will notice that many of the features that our community loves about Monkey Around are maintained within this redesigned playground.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have one more, if you don't mind. Council Bouchard?
And besides being inclusive, I believe this playground is also using a new material that looks like wood, but won't age and give splinters. Is that true?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, the new material that the playground will be, it will be used to build the playground has a 40-year warranty as opposed to the initial Monkey Around, which was only a 20-year warranty. But this one has 40-year warranty, and I'll have to get back to you on what that product is called.
Oh, I know. You don't.
Oh, do you know?
Yeah. So the partnership, the private-public partnership, Friends of White's Park, what's your goal for raising money towards this playground?
Well, as you can see on your handout, the estimated budget is $750,000. So our goal is to raise that in as many different ways as possible, from funding from anchor donors, community members, families, children, the city. So
thank you.
We would like to start our build the fall of '22. Is that right? Is that, I mean, we're a year behind schedule because of COVID, so fall of 2022, we hope to be having everyone over at White Park ready to go.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Good to see you. Anyone else? With all the line items on the budget, nobody else wants? Okay. So with that, then, we will close the public hearing on the budget, and we're going to take a 2-minute recess.
Did anybody go before Rory Schweiker?
You see, we were taking 2 minutes.
Roy was the first, and he first went on about wanting Wi-Fi outside.
All right, we are out of recess. We have completed the public hearings. We have before us the public hearing action phase. And Madam Clerk, if you could read item 6, please.
It's the resolution fixing and determining the amount of money to be appropriated by the City of Concord for fiscal year 2022 for the general fund, special revenue funds, enterprise funds, debt service funds, and de minimis accounts.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made, second. We have motion to move this. Let's open it up for discussion. Any discussion? Council Chair.
Thanks, Your Honor. Cognizant of the discussion that we had about the Friends program and the funding for the family shelter there, and also aware of your suggestion that they pursue other avenues and other sources of funding, but also being aware of the significant cut they receive from the state, I would like to make a motion to restore the $20,000 to their appropriation, raising it from $37,000 to $57,000. Excuse me.
Okay. Is there a second? Motion made and second to do that. So let me ask you a question. In terms of shelter, now this was dealing with specifically with families, but in terms of shelter, we know the McKenna House was also cut by $10,000. Do you want to pick just one, or are you looking at both? Or is there a reason you picked one and not the other? Or?
Yes, Your Honor. Just because the Friends program came here and explained their situation to us, and McKenna House did not. So I'm not aware. I would be inclined to want to restore all of that funding, but I know that the Friends program was the agency that came and pled their case.
Okay.
But I would be happy to amend my motion and include the McKenna House, because I know that the homeless situation is severe.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councilor Royce Hawkins.
I'll say that I support that motion. I think, as you just said, the situation right now is severe, and it's only going to get worse as the eviction moratoriums are lifted, and it's a difficult spot for people to find themselves in, and unfortunately, we need to address that.
Councilor Cassidy.
Yeah, just to be clear, did you amend your motion?
I did.
I second.
So now it's 30,000?
Yes.
Okay, great. And that motion's been seconded. Any discussion? So I wholeheartedly support it with one caveat that I would like to include in the motion if you're so acceptable. So as you know, we decided to wait to take up the budget till tonight, primarily because we wanted to understand what was going to go on with the state budget. And I think if we had taken this item up earlier this month, we would have been kind of stuck. But as you're probably all aware, on Thursday, the conferees for the House and the Senate on House Bill 1 and House Bill 2, all bills, I should say, completed their actions. And included in the proposed budget, and I'll be honest with you, I believe it's House Bill 2 actually, and whether that passes or not, whoever can tell me, then you can read crystal balls, I guess. But the fact is that both the House and Senate conferees did agree to a change in the formula for the rooms and meals tax. As you probably know, the rooms and meals tax, the statute said that 40% of the funding was to go back to municipalities. Well, the legislature never funded 40%. In fact, they were funding it to about the tune of 22%. We were all kind of just saying thank you for what we got, but we actually should have got the 40%. The legislature this year decided to suspend that 40%. They changed it and they reduced it to 30%. But they also at the same time created a dedicated fund, which that money would then go into to go back to cities and towns. So they reduced it from 40 to 30, created a dedicated fund, and with that, they actually funded it, not at the 22%, but they funded it at the 30%. So there's about an additional $50 million that's going to go back to local communities through the rooms and meals tax. So for this year, I say thank you. I may have a different answer in 2 years when we're having to compete with, but that's a whole nother, I'll stop there. So if you are willing to amend the motion to increase on page 52 of the budget, the rooms and meals line item which is currently set at $2,175,005. Increase that by $30,000. I would wholeheartedly endorse the motion so that we can offset the cost with the additional revenue, which I feel very confident with the change in the state budget. And I'm going to take a leap and say that at some point, sometime, they will pass a budget. I don't think the rooms and meals tax amendment will change, and we could safely put that additional revenue in our budget. Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, the number you just recited, is that the new number with the 30%, or what is the line item income?
Not 30%. So what I did was I took the current line, which is on page 52 of your budget, is 2175005, and then add 30,000 to that.
I will agree to make that amendment to that second amendment to my motion, Your Honor.
I second the amendment.
Thanks. Thanks. So we do have before us the addition of $30,000 in the social service budget line item, and to be offset by the additional revenue in the rooms and meals line item. Everybody understand where we are? Is there any further discussion about that? Seeing none, ready for a vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. Takes us back to our budget as amended. Anybody else want to talk about any other pieces? Councilor Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like for next year, as we look at these programs, that we also do a hard review of what we appropriate to the Pennacook Community Center. I think over the years we've given 30,000, 28,000. Now we're down to 20. It's a very, very good program. I think it was established in the late 1940s. It has great programs, I have no doubt about that. But it also is an organization that is regional. And I think, once again, as we were speaking earlier, there's an opportunity here for the Pennacook Community Center maybe to go to Merrimack County for funding. But I think the amount of funding we're giving now at this point in time, and the other services that are now in the city, and the bus services that we have, and like for seniors, there's the Good Life program that's free. I would hope next year that this council would look at the amount of funding that we give to the community center and exactly is it appropriate. I think if the Pennacook Community Center was called the Pennacook Boys and Girls Club, the Pennacook YMCA, the Pennacook Children's Place, we might not we might not have been given funding as long as we have been giving. So this year being COVID and everybody coming out and childcare being something that there's a real shortage of, I wouldn't want to do anything differently than we're doing now, but I do think going forward, we should take a hard look at that. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Keach?
Thank you, Ron. To Councilor Bouchard's comments, I do think this is a sort of a theme going forward, that we do a lot in the city to subsidize our surrounding communities, and with not a lot of economic help from our neighbors. And I think there's an opportunity to work perhaps with those communities around us for help, because a lot falls on our shoulders. And if I may go on just a little further, I'm a broken record, but the downshifting from the state continues, and I've said this for 10 years, but it's worse than ever, and we're in probably a better position than a property poor town like Franklin, but look at a property rich place like Meredith, and the tax structure is just so unfair, and so something on the state level needs to happen. I mean, for us to absorb $1 million in additional retirement costs in 1 year without very little notice is unfair and can't continue. So, but anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
I encourage you to keep saying that, actually. Councilor Creditbeck.
Thanks, Your Honor. I mean, it's $1 million this year, but compounded over the last 10 years. We're talking millions upon millions upon millions that the state has passed down to our communities, and it is really painful. Painfully painful. Can't say it enough. People need to realize what is happening at the state level that comes down to the communities when it comes to these property taxes. And it's tough every single year, and it's not getting easier. Just to reiterate what you said, Councilor Keach, not just this year, year after year after year. Thanks.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to speak a little bit about the police budget and why I support it. I've had the privilege of serving on Concord's Public Safety Advisory Board. The Public Safety Advisory Board is an advisory board to the council and is made up of city councilors around the table as well as citizen representatives. And recently, the PSAB took a year-long dive into issues that are related to racial equality and transparency and police accountability, immediately following the outrageous murder of George Floyd, and our work on these issues continues. What I believe that we found over the past year is that the Concord PD has really operated under a community policing model long before community policing became sort of the gold standard for police departments across the country, and that our department has policies that are either aligned with or exceed best practices in the field. In addition, I think we've also learned that the police department really has a strong desire to remain a leader in the field in terms of community service, accountability, and transparency. And I've been really impressed to see that the chief and his staff are open to finding new ways to increase the community's trust in the department with an eye toward ongoing growth and improvement. In fact, I think that the Concord Police Department really could be used as a model department for communities who really aspire to have more streamlined departments whose officers are working hand in hand with our social service agencies, because we know that police cannot end homelessness, racism, substance abuse, or violence, but they can certainly be part of the solution, and I think the Concord Police Department is doing just that. I think the police budget's goals for 2022 really reflect a community-oriented department and a department that is seeking to be transparent and accountable to the community. Specifically, for instance, this budget is investing in improving the police department's communication with residents through informational exchanges with community members, community groups, and businesses, because a commitment to community feedback and dialogue is really fundamental to any police department that's truly serving its community. And I personally look forward to being part of these conversations. This budget also makes an ongoing investment in prevention and education efforts, which I think are absolutely crucial. For instance, this budget invests in our comfort dog, Liberty, who works to help reduce trauma, such as in cases when there's been an abuse of a child or there's been a major fire or accident. It also invests in our domestic violence prevention officer, which is a really unique position in Concord, and I'm not sure if there's any similar positions in the state of New Hampshire. It also invests in our community resource officers, who are specially trained to collaborate with social service providers. This budget also ensures that our police department continues to work with community experts to develop, trauma-informed responses to those who are experiencing a crisis with their mental health, and to continue their work with agencies like Riverbend to effectively use that program's mobile crisis unit and crisis treatment. This budget also invests in police recruitment. I think a lot of times I've heard people joke that it's more difficult to be hired by the Concord PD than it is to be admitted into Harvard, and I see that as a really positive thing, because I think we should be really deliberate and selective in our hiring, and I'm grateful that the city manager and the chief are really committed to diversifying our department, because I think every kid in our community should be able to see someone in the police department who looks and speaks just like them. And finally, this budget invests in ongoing training for officers, training that focuses on wellness for the officers themselves, crisis management, transparency, in addition to our broader work as a city to undergo training on racial equality. And I think the department's desire to exceed best practices and their commitment to this ongoing education and training is exactly what will keep our police department a model agency in New Hampshire. For all of those reasons and more, I'll be supporting this budget.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Thank you, and I appreciate the comments by Councilor Grady Sexton. I would also state for the record that that work continues. We've only actually gone through a couple pages of the 21st Century Policing Task Force report, and the Public Safety Advisory Board did select at the last meeting not to continue that work as a full committee, but there is a subcommittee that's continuing to meet and work on that. So anybody who's interested in continuing the review, there's lots of great recommendations from that report and from the couple of pages that the committee has looked through already, posting the use of force policy, collecting racial data for arrests and stops, and other things like that are certainly a benefit to ensuring that our police department is the police department that represents our community and operates in the fashion that we would like it to. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Pierce, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy that Councilor Grady Sexton brought up the police. As a first-term councilor, I too sit on the Public Service Advisory Board, and I've been very, very impressed with the leadership and the everyday actions of both our police and fire departments. So thank you, Councilor, for bringing it up.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll be voting for the budget as well. Mr. Manager, I will tell you that I, as well as many of the people around this table, and I can speak for Council 9 because we did this together to a certain degree, we went through every line with a fine-tooth comb, and you did a heck of a job. There's not a lot of fluff in this budget, I can tell you. But I wasn't going to say anything. I said remarks for later, but I wanted to say a few things, and that, this operating budget, I think, really reflects really the great work that our city employees do. And it goes from people who are at City Hall to general services or our public safety folks, right across the board of all of our employees. And I'm very grateful for all that you do. But I also want to say that as a community, I think we also have to recognize that we do have our challenges ahead of us. I mean, it did not go unnoticed that, when the chief of police talks about the fact that we have the same number of officers currently today that we had when he started, we'll just say a long time ago, we're a different community. We're a community that has grown. We have new challenges, and I think we have to look at those things. We have, if you look at calls for services, we have a fire department that provides excellent service, and I happened to witness, unfortunately, a fire up the street from me, but what they also do in medical care is just second to none as far as I'm concerned. And I think when you look at the numbers, this community is going to have to talk about adding another ambulance at some point. I think when you look at our IT department, which does an incredible job with the amount of folks we have, the expertise that you bring is just tremendous. But if you look at what's going on across the country and the challenges that all communities and businesses are facing in cyber issues, it's pretty scary, and how dependent we've all become as a community and as a city on technology. I mean, I had a constituent yell at me for fun that she was upset because she could not renew her library card online. So people are dependent on IT, and we need to continue to, this budget does reflect an investment you've made, and I applaud that, but I think in the future, we're really gonna have to think long and hard about how we can make future investments in our IT. And those are just three things. I could keep going on each of the departments and the challenges they face. I mean, the fact that our streets are as safe as they are, and the kids getting to school finally, and crosswalks being painted, and I mean, these seems like little things, but they are the quality of life which makes Concord a really great place. Our Park and Recs department, we opened up a new renovated pool on Friday, and those things, those are why I think we all sit around this table and make a difference in people's lives and the quality of care. When you see those kids racing in to that pool to enjoy, which, it makes a huge difference. So, Mr. Manager, you did a great job. Thank you. And but don't think there aren't challenges in the future. So, anyone else? All right. So with that, we have a motion that's been amended. Are you ready for the question? Anybody want to tell me anything?
Ditto.
Councilor Krivik, what do you have?
You took everything I was going to say.
No, how about?
With the exception of, I think that last year we had said just to be ready for anything that's thrown at us during COVID. We don't know we're 100% out of it. Super appreciate everything that the city staff has done through this past year. I know you talked about technology, Your Honor. There's a number of constituents in my ward that I heard from that couldn't do technology because they just don't have access. And keeping city services open was important to them, and it was very much appreciated. That's all.
Great. So what I was looking for is if you had any conflicts.
Oh, I do have a conflict. Actually, I have two, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
The Crisis Center of Central New Hampshire, I'm on the board. I am the board chair, so I cannot vote on that. And my husband participates with the Coalition to End Homelessness and will not be voting on that as well.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Councilor Grady Sexton.
I also have a conflict with the Crisis Center of Central New Hampshire.
Thank you very much. Councilor Chamberlain.
Your Honor, I have a conflict with, excuse me, the Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. Anyone else? Great. Seeing none, appreciate you all doing that. Ready for the vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Okay, the others should go pretty quick. Item 7, Madam Clerk.
It's a resolution for the annual capital closeout and repurposing of capital project funds.
Thank you very much. Move approval.
Second.
Motion made second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, item 8, please.
It's a resolution authorizing and appropriating funds for fiscal year 2022 for capital projects and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes for various capital projects.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made second to approve this item. Is there any discussions? Capital projects. Okay. Mr. Walsh, nice job this year. Really appreciate the time, your effort you put into it. It makes a big difference. With that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Have received the necessary 2/3. Motion's adopted. Madam Clerk, item 9, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I General Code, Chapter 1 Government Organization, Article 1-5, Fees, Fines, and Penalties, Water Rates for the water rate structure.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made second to approve item 9. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, item 10, please.
An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I General Code, Chapter 1 Government Organization, Article 1-5, Fees, Fines, and Penalties, Water Rates for water wastewater rate increase.
Thank you very
Move
much.
approval.
Second.
Motion made second to approve item 10. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, item 11, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I General Code, Chapter 9 Water, Article 9-1 Waterworks.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, item 12, please.
An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I General Code, Chapter 9 Water, Article 9-3 Sewer Rentals.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made second to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. We have no new business, no unfinished business. Anybody like to share anything before we leave? Councilor Quebec.
Thank you, Your Honor. Believe it or not, 125 years ago, Beaver Meadow Golf Course was formed in the middle of a sheep field in Ward 3. On July 4th, even though it is the Independence Day celebration, we are also having a tournament for those that like to golf and want to celebrate the golf course. Go online, call the pro shop, and sign up. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I had 2 items. First, I want to talk a little bit about the budget. And usually I don't do my homework. I usually just kind of wing it up here on the budget, but tonight I actually took time this afternoon and be ready. So first I want to sincerely thank and commend the Finance Department's Office of Management and Budget, and quite frankly to all the city departments and staff across all the funds for the efforts undertaken to prepare what will undoubtedly be another award-winning budget. And I think we're on how many years now?
6.
There you go. As we move towards the end of the pandemic, I and the City Council is truly appreciative of the cooperation exhibited by the entire community, all of our city staff and first responders, particularly the fire department. We have done our best to keep each other safe, and while it's not been easy, we have preserved, and for what I am truly grateful and thankful. Going forward, while we have used unassigned fund balance to keep the tax rate down because of the continued downshifting of the cost by the state of New Hampshire, we will need to achieve a balanced budget in the near future as the economy improves. I look forward to developing working solutions with the Fiscal Policy Advisory Committee to improve our long-term finances. I believe our work over the last couple of months will pay dividends by the community, to the community by maintaining our high quality of service, delivery, and continued investments in our roads, our parks, and our vital infrastructure. I look forward to a productive and successful fiscal year. And yes, most importantly, there is dollars in this budget for the 4th of July fireworks. So if anybody's curious. I had one other item. You might remember we discussed that we need to have a public hearing on the Atlantic Broadband such proposal. And so the clerk has been so great to try to find some possible dates. And I was wondering if the week of July 19th might be a possibility. Wednesday, I believe, is probably taken already, but either Monday or Tuesday or Thursday, which would be the 19th, 20th, or 22nd. Is that a possibility for anybody?
Your Honor, I will not be available.
Neither will I.
Me neither.
I'm available Monday and then I'm gone.
Let's meet at Concord.
Monday, Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday, then I'm gone.
So that might make sense.
Okay.
My birthday on that Wednesday.
So typically, the third Monday is like the recess council date. Would anybody oppose if we went ahead with the 19th?
I won't be able to make it, Your Honor, but
Well, we're getting less and less likely to have a quorum. Okay, we'll be back in July. With some new dates. Okay, last thing I would like to ask is for, and I did not tell her ahead of time, so I apologize, but Madam Clerk, could you just remind us, for the residents who live in Ward 4, when is the special election, where does the polling location, et cetera?
Absolutely. 3 weeks from tomorrow, residents in Ward 4 will be voting at the Boys and Girls Club at 55 Bradley Street. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They'll be voting to fill the vacant Ward 4 City Council seat.
Thank you.
Any questions, please call the clerk's office.
So let's set records for the number of turnout in a special election. How's that?
We do also have absentee ballots available if someone's going to be out of town in Ward 4.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything you want to add before we go? Mr. Manager, do you have anything you want to say?
I would, but I know you all want to get out of here, so no, I'm fine, thank you.
All right. Non-meeting meetings? Okay, so we can adjourn, right?
Adjourn, yes.
Thank you. So with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Great to see everybody.